Good morning and welcome to Melbourne Legacy's 90th Anzac commemoration ceremony for students. Legacy was founded back in 1923 and for the past 99 years has been providing support to the families of Australian Defence Force men and women who've lost their life or health in the service of Australia. Joining us today, we have a band and choir from Melbourne High School and a choir from McRobertson Girls High School. Our pipers, Finlode and Magnus McRae, are students at Scotch College, and the cadets on parade are from Melbourne High School, as are our buglers, Wesley Parkin and Oscar Coops. Assisting in today's service, our Shrine Young Ambassadors, Bridget White, Sophia Costello, Darcy Egberts, Rohan Badwal, Talia Theophilus, Rehan Ali, Olivia Campbell, Amelia Mine and George Sianakis. The Honour Guard from Melbourne High School are now in position. Unfortunately, Her Excellency the Governor is still recovering from COVID-19. However, she has sent her aide-de-camp to represent her today, and we now await the arrival of Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Strack. He'll be greeted by Captain Stephen Bowater, OAM, the Chairman of the Shrine of Remembrance Trustees, Kerry Jenke, President of Melbourne Legacy, Junior Legatee Bailey McKean, and Shrine Young Ambassador Bridget White. The official party will now inspect the Guard of Honour. You are now invited to join with the McRobertson Girls High School Choir and the Melbourne High School Band as they present the song, I Am Australian. You'll find the words in your program. Thank you to the McRobertson Girls High School Choir and the Melbourne High School Band. As Her Excellency, the Honourable Linda Dessau, the Governor of Victoria, is unable to be with us today, she has recorded her Melbourne Legacy 90th Annual Anzac Commemoration Ceremony address.
I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathering and by paying my respects to elders past and present and to elders of other communities who may be with us today. I'm so pleased to join you, albeit virtually, for Melbourne Legacy's 90th Annual Anzac Commemoration for students. Today, we're commemorating what happened on the 25th of April 1915, almost 107 years ago, when soldiers from the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps fought in Gallipoli, Turkey, in World War I. 107 years, it's such a long time. The more so, I think, when you're as young as so many of you who are here today are young. It can be hard for you to relate to the commemoration of events from times that must seem to you so very different from today. And of course, they were different times. For example, it was a time when around Melbourne, the most common forms of transport were still horse and carts and bicycles. Cars and trams were only just becoming popular then. And let me say for context, one of the most popular stores for shopping was a new one called Coles, where nothing cost more than 1 shilling. That's just 10 cents. And I should probably add that many of you would have left school by the age of 12. So different from today, but then again, so similar in fundamental ways. The young men who went to fight and the young women who took up essential roles, such as nursing, were stepping up at a time of crisis, a crisis of absolutely global proportion. Millions were fighting in countries across Europe, the Middle East, Africa and Asia. but the desire to serve, shown by so many Australians of the time, the desire to step up to the call of a crisis, is not something confined to then. It's absolutely common to today. Men and women have joined and served our Australian Defence Force across all the decades since those days in 1915. They've consistently stepped up in wars and battles and in missions to make and keep the peace. And of course, they continue to serve today, both here and overseas. And although those who enlisted more than 100 years ago led lives different from yours today, exactly like you, they were loved by and loved their families, their mums and dads, brothers and sisters, grandparents, uncles and aunts and cousins. And exactly as you would, they felt the wrench as they sailed thousands of miles away. They felt proud to serve, excited about the adventure, curious about the world they'd not yet seen, and no doubt fearful as to what awaited them in battle. Today, 107 years later, we remain bound to them in ways that they could never have imagined as they stepped into that unknown. Our stable democracy and the freedoms that we hold so dear were protected and promoted by their sacrifices. Their courage in the face of adversity and the way they looked out for each other still imbue our national psyche. We're proud of those very characteristics of Aussie grit and Aussie mateship. Their commitment to service has also become a part of us, even beyond the outstanding service and sacrifice of our defence men and women. A selfless response in a time of crisis permeates our daily lives here at home. You've seen it firsthand amongst yourselves, your families and your communities, as so many have responded selflessly to help out in bushfires, the pandemic, and right now in floods. So today, when we look back more than 100 years, we're not commemorating some distant event consigned to history. We're remembering the sacrifices made then and since, the lives lost, and the examples set that directly affect our lives today. We're reflecting on our gratitude for the service given by all Australian Defence Force members, past and present. And we're reflecting on our gratitude to Legacy for almost 100 years of important care and support for the families of veterans, and for the enormous effort that's brought together this ceremony today, the 90th such commemoration for students. In these ways, Legacy ensures that all those who have served shall not be forgotten, lest we forget.
Would you now welcome Captain Stephen Bowater, OAM, Chairman of the Shrine of Remembrance Trustees.
Good morning. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Strack, Reviewing Officer, President Melbourne Legacy, Kerry Jenke, distinguished guests, and most importantly, students and teachers. Welcome to the Shrine of Remembrance and the 2022 Melbourne Legacy Commemoration Ceremony for Students. I am Captain Stephen Bowater and I am privileged to serve as the Chair of the Shrine of Remembrance Trustees. Today marks the annual observance of this special commemoration linking Melbourne Legacy with the Shrine. Legacy has actively supported the Shrine since its foundation in 1927, and together we have served our community's need to remember those who have served in times of war. The Shrine of Remembrance is held in care by the Shrine Trustees on behalf of all the Victorians. We embrace the diversity of our community, and I acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also wish to recognise those members of the Australian and Allied Defence Forces amongst us and thank you for your service as we remember the fallen and those no longer with us. The Shrine of Remembrance opened 88 years ago in 1934 to commemorate the 114,000 Victorians who enlisted in the First World War, 89,100 of those whom deployed to battlefronts overseas, and 19,000 remain on the battlefields or upon the ocean floor. Our enduring purpose now is to honour service and sacrifice of Victorians and Australians in war, conflict, peacemaking and peacekeeping from the First World War of 1914 to today. As our nation prepares for its most revered day of remembrance, Anzac Day, we warmly welcome you all to the Shrine of Remembrance. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Bowater. And now with a special legacy welcome, the President of Melbourne Legacy, Kerry Jenke.
Today we acknowledge the traditional owners and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Welcome and thank you all for attending today. I'm Kerry Jenke, President of Melbourne Legacy. Today is the 90th anniversary of the Student Anzac commemoration ceremony held here at the Shrine. Each year we gather together and pause for a moment to reflect on the loss of young Australians in wars. You, the students of the new millennium, might quietly question why we continue with such ceremonies after so many years have passed. I hope you find your answers today in this ceremony. The soldiers of World War I and World War II represented the future of Australia in 1914 and 1939 as you represent the future today in 2022. Like you, they had dreams, ambitions, hopes for the future. At 18 or 19, their futures were bright, as yours are now. But they gave up their dreams when they answered the call of their country to fight in a war a long way from home. They were perhaps not more than a year or two older than some of you. Soldiers are young men, and today young women. Australia lost generations of young men in wars. Not just those who lost their lives, but also those who survived to return home, those soldiers who lost their health. Let me tell you about one of them from World War I, Ira Cecil Worthley, a young man from rural South Australia. Ira's dream was to buy a small farm and marry his sweetheart Jessie. Instead, he enlisted in 1915 when he was 20 years old, went off to France as part of the 32nd Battalion, leaving his sweetheart and his dreams firmly in Australia. His great-great-granddaughter Charlotte is with us wearing his medals today. In 1917, from the front line, he wrote a Christmas card to Jessie, simply inscribed with the words, "From 2756, Private Ira C. Worthley. To Jessie, Merry Christmas, Ira." After 2 years at the front, his earlier enthusiasm was missing. Sentiment would have been a little hard to muster. After 4 years fighting in battles around Ypres, Polygon Wood and Villers-Bretonneux in France, Ira returned to Australia. He survived the war and Jessie was waiting for him on his return. He resumed his life, married. He and Jessie bought a farm together, raised 3 daughters together. And most people who saw him thought Ira lived a good life. But life was never the same for Ira or for his family. Like many others, he'd buried the memories of his war deep inside, sharing them only with his comrades, never with his wife or family. He experienced periods of melancholy and spent long periods away from Jessie and his family in a repatriation hospital in Adelaide. This young man who went to war with a sense of patriotism and duty returned to his family, disturbed, perhaps shattered. And like so many others like him, his life was changed forever. And like so many families, Ira's could only watch in silence. The full cost of wars is quite often hidden in those unspoken stories in our families' histories. As civilians, we can never really understand the impact on the lives of men and women who serve and return. The burden of caring for soldiers like Ira fell to a generation of wives and mothers and was passed on to their children and grandchildren. Today, Legacy shares that burden with our families. Those soldiers of World War I, World War II, all of our wars, how many were there, made a sacrifice worthy of remembrance. They fought for their country, they went willingly. It was a duty nobly done. We are not here today to glorify war or soldiers. Today we remember and honour those who died. We remember and honour too those soldiers like Private Worthley who fought and lived, lest we forget.
Thank you, Carrie Jenke. We now welcome Taylor Redgewell, Ballarat Grammar Year 12 student and a junior legatee of Ballarat Legacy. Taylor will read John McCosker's poem, Solitary Soldier.
At the going down of the sun and the dark of night approaching, I stand here in solitary silence, standing to attention, always watching. No more orders to be ready, no more fear and no more fighting. I watch the rain and snow falling, the wind, the storms and the lightning. I feel no pain or suffering, but I remember the times of past, the loss of mates and family. I pray this war will pass. The silence of the guns, no more sounds of pain and groans. There are those who did not make it, a few returning home. In the morning, I feel the light and warmth surrounding me. 2 days a year, you come and see me, flags and bugles sounding. Troops and families marching, a pause with silence, remembering. Troops and those soldiers who did not return and sacrificed their life, and all. These brave men and women who answered their country's call. My friends are all around me as I do not stand alone. Spend some time and read their names, always to be remembered, a memory forever etched in stone. I stand here, the solitary cenotaph soldier, a reminder of our fallen past.
Thank you, Taylor. Time now to welcome back our choir and a very popular song that we can all join in, Waltzing Matilda. Thank you. We ask you all to stand as the Shrine Guard will now form up at the Eternal Flame. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Strack, accompanied by Melbourne Legacy President Kerry Jenke and Charlotte Jenke, will now lay wreaths at the eternal flame. The two wreaths will be handed to Colonel Strack and Kerry Jenke by Shrine Young Ambassadors Darcy Egberts and Rowan Badwell. We now invite Shrine Young Ambassadors Talia Theophilus and Rehan Ali and all students laying wreaths to come forward and lay your wreaths under direction from the Shrine Senior Custodian. The next part of our service today begins with a recitation of the Ode, the fourth stanza of For the Fallen, a poem by the English poet and writer Lawrence Binyon. Following the Ode, the bugler sounds the last post, and we will observe a minute's silence, during which we honour the sacrifice of all who have died in the service of their country. The silence will end with the words, "Lest we forget," which we all repeat before the bugler sounds the rouse. Please be upstanding now. The Melbourne Legacy President, Kerry Jenke, will recite the Ode.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. Please be seated. We now await the arrival of the legacy torch. This torch symbolises the undying flame of service and sacrifice handed to us by our comrades in war who have passed on. The torch today is being carried by our Shrine Young Ambassador, Sophia Costello, who will hand the torch to Junior Legatee Bailey McKean. During the torch procession, we will hear from two high school captains. Firstly, MacRobertson Girls High School captain Ananya Bowes will recite the most famous of the war poems, In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you, Ananya Bose. Now, Melbourne High School Captain Arth Tuteja will read We Shall Keep the Faith.
O you who sleep in Flanders fields, sleep sweet to rise anew. We caught the torch you threw, and holding high, we kept the faith with those who died. We cherished too the poppy red that grows on fields where valour led. It seems to signal to the skies that blood of heroes never dies, but lends a lustre to the red of the flower that blooms above the dead in Flanders fields. And now the torch and poppy red, wearing the honour of our dead. For fear not that ye have died for naught, we've that lessons that ye taught in Flanders fields.
Thank you, Arth. Now let us all join together in the answer. You'll find the words in today's programme. Fear not that you have died for naught. The torch you threw to us we caught, and now our hands will hold it high. Its glory light shall never die. We'll not break faith with you who lie on many a field. Please stand to sing our Australian national anthem. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Strack will now depart. Please remain standing until the official car has moved off. Shrine Guard will dismount. The Honour Guard will now march off. Now that the Shrine Guard has dismounted and the Guard of Honour marched off, that brings us to the end of today's 90th Melbourne Legacy Anzac commemoration ceremony for students. Our special thanks go to the Melbourne High School Band and McRobertson Girls High School Choir. Our buglers, Wesley Parkin and Oscar Coops, pipers Finn Lode and Magnus McRae, our junior legatee, Bailey McKean, Ballarat junior legatee, Taylor Redgewell, Shrine Young Ambassadors, Bridget White, Sophia Costello, Darcy Egberts, Rohan Badwal, Talia Theophilus, Rehan Ali, Olivia Campbell, Amelia Mine and George Sianakis, and you for being part of this service today. We trust you found the day meaningful and hope you'll be encouraged to take part in the Anzac Day services in just a couple of weeks. Any schools intending to enter the shrine today are welcome to do so, and in line with current public health directives, the shrine requires all visitors, including students, to check in with names and phone numbers. Adults are required to show proof of full vaccination. Please come to the Visitor Centre entrance where shrine staff will greet you. Thank you for being with us today.